Go.
Keegan had an extraordinary love for Caroline, but it's interesting that they came to what became the YCW independently. Though Keegan certainly had been encouraged by a priest in Wigan, his parish priest probably, to think along those lines. The priest may have been reading about Caroline, but Keegan had gone off on his own and just travelled all around Lancashire at night time, trying to get young blokes to talk about their lives and what they really wanted out of life. And it was later that he was brought into contact with Cardone, when Cardone wanted to make sure that the YCW was wider than just a French or a Belgian phenomenon. What makes a prophet? Well, this is from theology and philosophy, I suppose. To me, it's a person who so listens to the voice of the Spirit or of God in their heart, and that they're prepared to put everything on the line rather than to not obey that call. And so through them, the Spirit can lead them individually into new visions of what can be. And out of that, other people are drawn to it. As Therese of Lisieux said in her autobiography, "Draw me, and we will run." She was commenting on one of the Psalms, that this is what a prophet is, a person who's drawn ahead of other people, and then they will draw other people after them. It was tied to this, one of the things that happened during the council. One night, some of the lay auditors had decided that they needed to get the Irish hierarchy on side for the future of the church. And so they had this dinner party to which primarily it was the man who would become Cardinal Archbishop of Armagh. He'd had already been appointed Archbishop, but he hadn't got the right hat at that stage, to a dinner. And Paddy O'Donnell was invited also. That was my Archbishop. I kept largely to make sure that the Archbishop of Armagh didn't feel he was being set upon, and also the fact that they tried to incorporate PM O'Donnell in anything where I was involved, so that he would continue to allow me to go to the council. But that night, what Keegan and these others, de Havish, were on about was that they wanted the training of the clergy and the religious to follow really the Cardinian approach, that they had to be trained in life, not in seminaries. And there were already experiments going on in parts of Belgium and France where candidates for the priesthood were sent up to get a job somewhere, and 4 or 5 of them would live with a particularly apostolic priest who was good with a pastorally minded priest, and then they'd be given some philosophy and theology and scriptural studies at weekends. But that was not very popular with the authorities in Rome nor in Australia. At any rate, that night, that was the purpose of that dinner party. And it was interesting to see how the Archbishop of Armagh constantly had excuses of this group of priests in the diocese were not accepted, or that. And it was an important night for me, because I can remember looking down at my hands and saying, there comes a time where you hold yourself and your future completely in your own hands. Now, I had already been in Ireland on 3 or 4 years long vacation. I kept cousins there. I'd had experience of how the local parish priests and that worked. And so, having summoned up my courage, I decided to get off the fence. And I just looked at the Archbishop and said, "Your Grace, who leads the church in Ireland? You or some backward man from the Monsignor from some remote part of the Irish church who doesn't really know what life and real faith in God's all about. And that broke the dam. Up until then, the laity had been more and more respectful of the role of the Archbishop. From then on, they pulled no punches. And that night when I had to take Paddy O'Donnell and the Irish Archbishop to their places of residence afterwards, and as I was putting on my overcoat, it was winter time, and 3 or 4 of them came up to me and said, "Will you come back after you do deposited the hierarchy?" And I said, "Sure." I'm thinking that they were just wanting I had the Volkswagen, they wanted to lift home. But when I walked back into the little vestibule of the place, and I was taking off my scarf and my overcoat, the others were in this salon where they were drinking their scotches and their cognacs. And they saw me come in, and then I saw them put one by one, they put their glasses down on the table, and they came up and embraced me. And the major thing that they said was, "Thank God at last we can embrace a priest who understands the heart and the mind of the laity. It's not afraid of the hierarchy." So it's important for me. We can stop there. Okay?
Yeah. Can I just, before we stop this part, can I just ask you about how big, like you see, for example, he also was very much in favour of the Cardine approach.
Who's that?
How do you pronounce his name? De Habicht.
De Habicht.
De Habicht.
Well, De Habicht, he was trained in the, not the Habicht, it was the
Pax Romana.
Pax Romana approach. It's a much more intellectual approach. Rosemary Goldie, the Australian who was in the Pax Romana, she had studied in the Sorbonne, spoke excellent French. She was also a lay auditor of the council,
yes,
and had been connected with the Courier for quite a long time. I don't think De Habicht ever personally embraced the same vision as Keegan, but he realised that Keegan was on the side of the angels.
Right.
And
he supported Keegan.
Very much.
Yeah. So did they see Keegan, those auditors, for most of them, did they perceive him as like a leader?
Ah, yes, because when the auditors had been appointed from various parts of the church, but when it came to the first layperson to address the council, and that was Keegan. Keegan was the one they chose.
So they chose Keegan.
They chose Keegan. Well, there were 2 levels. Various names had been put on the piece of paper up to Paul VI, and the one he ticked was Keegan's.
Right.
So, but the laity there knew that Keegan was the leader.
Yeah.
And they only had to observe him during the council. Time and again, there was a special tribune for the lay auditors, and I was sitting among them. But in the morning, before the council got underway, every day pretty well, there was an archbishop or a cardinal or somebody from other parts of the world. It could be Brazil, it could be North America, it could be England, it could be India, where they'd be just coming up and asking advice on what they should do in their diocese. Should they appoint this priest or that priest to particular roles? So his leadership was recognised he was an extraordinary leader. And as I said often, thank God he was on our side. And of course some of the stories, he was quite ruthless. When, I might have talked about this one. At one stage, at the English hierarchy, they were put on a cocktail party at the end of the 3rd session of the council to thank all the various people around Rome who helped them during the council. And of course, Keegan was invited, so I was invited. And while we were there, the Archbishop of Cardiff, I think his name was Murphy, came up and said, "Pat, did you see the pastoral letter on the laity that I sent out to the diocese just before we came out for this session of the council?" Pat said, "Yes, Your Grace, I did. What did you think of it, Pat?" "I thought it was marvellous, Your Grace. I'd been waiting for somebody in the hierarchy to say something like that for many, many years. Let me with only one small problem, Your Grace." "What's that, Pat?" But you must have some sort of a mental problem. I don't know if schizophrenia is the right word, because you constantly say the right thing and then you do the complete opposite. Stop.
Yes.